Hello everybody, I'm Chris Stevenson, and I'm on the board of directors for URSA, and we are very proud to bring to you this incredible educational training video. We've all learned a lot during the pandemic, but two things that stand out, especially for people in our industry, are that exercise is medicine and gyms are essential. So as operators, we need to provide a member experience that people are looking for in this new normal. It's our responsibility to give them a facility that they feel safe and comfortable in so they can in fact take care of their health and fitness. And doing so will not only help you be more successful as a facility, but it will also collectively help us elevate the entire status of our industry so that the world knows how important we are. So take what you learn in this video and use it to train your staff to make sure you always deliver an exceptional member experience in this post-COVID era. As I mentioned, I'm Chris Stevenson.
And I'm Marissa Hoff, and we want to share with you our objectives for this video.
The first thing we want to do is build a case for a great member experience. We're going to share with you some statistics, data, and research that shows just how impactful and important it is.
And then we're going to talk about why customer experience is so important, especially now post-COVID.
And we're not going to give you just theory, we're going to give you tangible tips and tools that you can implement that immediately make a difference.
And we're going to do this through three key areas of the customer experience.
There is a plethora of research and data on just how impactful a great member experience is. But we picked a few points we thought were really important in regards to our industry. Now remember, our industry is generally successful based on the 3 R's. That's revenue, retention, and referrals. If you nail all 3 of those, you tend to have a successful fitness business.
On the revenue side, we know that 70% of Americans will spend more money on an experience that they consider to be superior.
On the retention side, we know that 93% of consumers will continue purchasing from you if they believe you're delivering an exceptional experience.
And finally, we also know that on the referral side, 38% of consumers are more likely to refer your business if they consider it to be good.
And in regards to those 3 points, as I said when we opened this segment, there is a plethora of information that shows how important customer service is. But now in this post-COVID era, it's even more important. Consumers now have more choices than ever between actual facilities, virtual options, working out at home, working out outdoors. So there's plenty to choose from. They're also more skeptical. Consumers are a little more concerned when going to facilities right now. So member experience is more important than it's ever been.
So today we're going to focus on 3 key areas. The first is member interactions. The second one is suggestions and complaints. And finally, we're going to end with policy enforcement.
So the first area that we're going to talk about are member interactions. And member interactions are key. This really helps create an incredible experience. Now remember one thing, think of everything right now as a first impression, because people are now coming back to your facility, or it might be a new member, or it could be somebody that had frozen their membership and they're engaging for the first time. So pretend everybody is a first impression and you know you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So the first step in this process is the world stops. And what I mean by that is when a member is in your presence, all of your focus, no matter what your role in the organization is that member. So what used to be okay was friendly, you're doing your work, you're working on your task, and you look over at a member and you say, hey, nice to see you, have a great workout. Something to that extent. That's no longer acceptable. What has to happen is whatever you're doing stops and all of your focus goes to that member. You're completely engaged, making eye contact, ready to serve that person. So again, friendly and nice is no longer good enough. You got to think of yourself in an attitude of service to that member at all time, and that member has to feel like they're the most important person in the world.
Now that the world has stopped and all focus is on the member, we want to ensure that every single person receives a warm welcome. What does that look like? Well, of course, your eyes are on the member, and of course, you're going to show your teeth. Now, of course, we have masks most of the time, but they can tell if you're smiling. So make sure that you do that every time someone comes in, and of course, you're going to use names.
Yes, names. Names 100% of the time. Names are very powerful. They're often a member's favorite thing to hear. It also personalizes an experience and makes somebody feel comfortable. And while looking at a screen and reading somebody's name and then using it is okay, what's better is if you can actually take the time to remember people's names. So what's interesting about our industry is people tend to come to the gym at the same time and people tend to work the same shifts. So if you make it a conscious priority on your shift to remember those regulars that come in and memorize their names, you're going to create an incredible, warm, and welcoming experience. And one key to remembering names is a technique we call FACE. That is focus, ask, connect, and execute. That mnemonic is really helpful. So focus means just really be engaged. The world has stopped, right? So I'm engaged with that person. I'm focused on it. And then asking if you don't know, saying, I'm Chris, what was your name? And again, staying focused while they tell you the name. Then coming up with some internal connection that reminds you of that name. Maybe it's they look like somebody else you know with the same name, or something that helps you remember. And then the E, execute it. At the end of your conversation, reuse that name. Say, it was so nice speaking with you, Rick.
One element that is often overlooked is body language. Everyone at the welcome desk needs to be standing tall, with their shoulders back, with their head lifted high, and we know that we're not going to be leaning against the desk or slouching or having our arms crossed, because that delivers an unintentional message. We often say, if you're leaning, you're not cleaning, which means a member knows that even if there's a spot that could use some attention, if you're leaning on the desk, that shows that you're not doing what you need to be doing. So be aware that even though you may not be engaging with someone directly, your body language speaks volumes.
So everything we've talked about up to this point leads to when somebody leaves your facility, and we want to create a great experience by making sure they receive a fond farewell. So what does a fond farewell look like? Well, first let me tell you what it doesn't look like. It's not, thanks for coming. It's not, have a great day. That doesn't create a memorable, engaging experience. What we want to do is, first off, ask them how their experience was today. And in a post-COVID world, that's a very powerful question, because oftentimes, if people have a bad experience, they'll leave without telling you. So as somebody's leaving your facility, engage them by saying, how was your experience today? And they might say, it was wonderful. And that's a great thing. But it might also prompt them to tell you something that wasn't great for them that day, and then you have the chance to address that. Once you get through that piece, then we want to engage them by making them feel like they need to come back, because they do need to come back. So it's not just have a great day, it's when are we going to see you again? Or, hey, see you tomorrow? So we ask questions like that, so it prompts them again to reinforce the fact that they need to come back, and we give them a really strong piece of engagement on the way out. And that creates a great experience. So if you start with the world stops and end with a fond farewell and execute everything in between, you're guaranteeing that your member interactions will be top notch.
Our second area of focus is suggestions and complaints. And as club owners, we know that members love to give us suggestions and complaints. But what we want to do is make sure that we have a plan in place. So regardless of whether there's a welcome desk person, a trainer, a Group X instructor, they all approach this in the same way. So this is what we train. When someone comes up with a suggestion, we want to first thank them for making that suggestion. Thank you for taking the time. This is going to help us improve our business. And this is true. Secondly, you want to make sure that you get all the details necessary so that the person in charge of that area can address that suggestion. Now, obviously, we won't be able to make every suggestion come to be the way the member wants it to be done, but at least it gives them a voice. So for instance, if someone comes up to you and they say, I'd like to see another sanitizing station, you want to make sure that you record, whether it's digitally or in a notebook, whatever it is, exactly what they're telling you. So was it that there weren't enough, or maybe the area in which you're working out doesn't have one, so that once you pass it along, they know exactly how to respond. Then you want to make sure that you get their current contact information. Yes, you might have it in the system, but let's say Rick comes up to you with a suggestion. You want to say, Rick, is this still your email? Are you still at rick@gmail.com? And he'll say yes, and you'll know that that's the best way to get in touch with them. And finally, you want to say thank you. Thanks again for taking the time out of your day to help us improve our business. And that's suggestions.
That is a very solid strategy for taking suggestions. Now we'll move on to something that's not quite as fun, and that's handling complaints. So the first thing to understand when someone has a complaint is you want to be empathetic and not defensive. It's very easy in a tense situation to be defensive. So make sure that you're empathetic. It's saying, oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. Approach someone with empathy, especially in the post-COVID era. Empathy is a very powerful thing. But while doing so, make sure that you protect the house. And I've seen this in my years of experience in our industry where people tend to throw the house under the bus because they don't want to deal with the conflict. So simply saying, yeah, I know, right? Or, well, that's the way they do that. Okay, it's never them, it's always us. It's we when you approach the situation. That's what solves these problems the best. Then I like to say, spin that complaint into a suggestion. Now, while that's not a perfect magic trick, and I wish it was, when somebody comes up and they're complaining and about something in particular and you're empathetic, you could say, you know what, we appreciate your feedback and I'd like to get a little more detail on that. So that at least spins it and takes some of the confrontation out of it and tends to put people in a much better place. So after we spin that complaint into a suggestion, then if you can solve it immediately, obviously you want to do that. And hopefully you're empowered to do so. But if not, it's your job to get details. So ask them more specific questions about the complaint, because then you're going to have more details and it will be easier as you pass this information on for somebody to solve that problem. Then you're going to reassure the person, someone will get back to you to address that. And then, by the way, make sure that somebody actually does that. Get current contact info and details. I know it's in your system, but if you can get it right then and there, because sometimes things like that change, it makes that process much easier. And then finally, at the end of the complaint process, you want to make sure that you thank them for their feedback.
Now that we've talked both about suggestions and complaints, we can talk about my favorite, and that's playmaking. And that's when a member may not actually voice a suggestion or a complaint. It might be something informal in passing or in conversation. For instance, let's say a member comes up to your welcome desk and wants to know when the spin classes are being offered. And the welcome desk attendant informs them they're at 6 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. Then the member kind of shrugs and says, oh, that's way too early for me, thank you, and walks off. This is the opportunity for the welcome desk person to make a suggestion on behalf of that member. So that member will get some sort of follow-up from the Group X manager that says something like, I heard that you would rather take spin classes in the afternoon. Let me make note of that, and when we go to reevaluate our schedule, we'll let you know. Now, whether you're going to make a change or not, that member is being listened to, and in a way that they weren't even formally asking for it. That's the kind of heads-up playmaking that makes members take a step back and go, wow, I can't believe my gym did that. And that was in a good way. So take the opportunity to train your staff to be on the lookout, to have conversations, to engage with members, and to record these as a way to really follow through with members about what they need and what they want in your club.
So those three things are very, very important. But there's one last thing that I want to touch on, and that's owning questions. We've always talked about owning questions where we do things for members. So if a member says, where are your towels? You don't politely with a smile say, oh, if you go down the hall, turn right, it'll be on your left-hand side. There's also a bin of towels in the locker room. We say, let me get you one. Or if somebody said, where is the locker room? You don't politely give directions. You escort them to the locker room. That's owning questions. But the three things that we just talked about, there's a way to have a preemptive strike on those things, and that's by proactively owning questions. So again, in this new era, this post-COVID world, have your head on a swivel. Make sure that you're always looking for somebody who may have a question. You know, the members that are standing there looking a little lost or maybe a little frustrated. So instead of just owning questions when they ask you, seek out those questions. When you see those people, deliberately walk up to them and engage with them. Ask them if there's something they can do. And the answer might be no, but those people will still appreciate the fact that you were proactive about it. So now you have tools that you can use or that you can train your staff to use to properly take suggestions, handle complaints, go out there and make some plays, and proactively own questions. The third and final area we want to talk about is policy enforcement. Here's the funny thing about policy. Think about you as a consumer. When was the last time you tried to get something done in the store or the service said, well, that's our policy? Nobody likes the word policy. It wasn't like you were like, oh, policy, cool, I'm excited, right? Nobody likes the word policy. Secondly, your staff hates enforcing policies. It is the least favorite part of their job. It's interesting, you'll see the old, you can't use a cell phone and have a conversation on a piece of cardio equipment. And when your staff has to go enforce that, they do the world's slowest slow motion walk, because in their mind they're like, if I walk slow enough, the person will wrap up their phone call before I get to them and I won't have to do anything. That's how much our teams generally hate enforcing policy. But it's something that always had to be done, And now with COVID and new guidelines and restrictions, there's going to be even more to enforce. So it's important to put an effective system in place that empowers your staff to do it in a way that's not so bad.
You have to be wearing a mask.
Really? Why?
It's just our policy.
Inside?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
My name's Marissa. I'm a personal trainer here. What's your name?
Hi, my name's Rick.
Nice to meet you, Rick. I'm sure you had no idea, but we actually require you to wear a mask while you're working out in the weight room. Yeah, we're just trying to follow the guidelines and keep our staff and members safe.
That makes sense.
Yeah, do you have a mask on you, or do you want me to go ahead and grab you one from the front desk?
I have one in the car.
Oh, I'll go ahead and grab you one from the front desk.
great.
We have extras for
Awesome.
people that forget them.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So here are the steps to effective policy enforcement. Let's say, for example, you're in an area where masks are required when you're lifting weights. Okay, that's the policy, and there's a member who is not wearing one. So the first thing you want to do, step one, is approach the person, introduce yourself and your role at the club. So I would say, I'm Chris and I'm one of the personal trainers here at the club. What that does is two things. One, it starts a bond because you're introducing yourself, you're interested in that. Secondly, it automatically puts you in a position of authority. You're not just some person, you're introducing yourself and your role. The second thing is you want to tell them what they're doing wrong. And when you do it, here's a key. Let them off the hook. Say, I'm sure you had no idea, but we do require masks while lifting weights in the weight room. Now, generally they have an idea and they're just trying to get away with something. We all know that that's how members sometimes act. But if you say it in a way, it makes it less confrontational. I'm sure you had no idea, or I'm sure you weren't aware, but we do require masks. Now, here's the other thing about a policy like that. People just don't care unless there's a good reason behind it. So then you would go from explaining what the behavior you're looking for is to why that's important. So I would then say, in order to follow local and state guidelines and to do our part in protecting our members and our staff and stopping the spread of COVID-19, that's why you have to wear a mask in this area. And I'll tell you a little thing with that. People generally follow rules if they think it's negatively affecting someone else. We've all been in a situation where we're like, we're fine, I'm vaccinated, I don't care. But when you put it in a way that it might affect somebody else, they're more willing to comply because they don't want to interfere with other people's experience. So think about that, whatever reason you're giving for a policy to be enforced, try to add something where the person is negatively affecting someone else's experience in addition to their own. Then after that, you don't want to simply tell them they can't do something, you want to offer alternatives as well. So what you may say in this particular example is, although you have to wear it here, we have options like face shields if the mask is uncomfortable, or we have other areas of the club where masks aren't required to be used. So again, you're not just shutting down what they're doing, you're giving them alternatives. You're working with them to solve this problem and make them have a great experience. After you go through that part of the process, then you want to make sure you're gracious and you thank them for listening to what you had to say and for complying. But that's the step-by-step process that it's not perfect. You know, sometimes you will have members who simply are those cranky members who won't agree or will get cranky about the whole thing. But for most people, when you approach it with that step-by-step process, they're very responsive. And also, again, you're giving your staff a step-by-step process that works really well. So the likelihood of your staff enforcing these policies goes up greatly.
We gave you tangible tips and tools for how to enhance the member experience. When they walk in that door, when you greet them, when they give you a suggestion or a complaint, and when you say farewell. Those are all part of member interactions. And we also have suggestions and complaints. And we talked about policy enforcement, which is probably the most difficult one for our staff. And make sure that you take those step by step, and that will help you to engage the member in a better experience.
And remember, it's not enough to watch this video and try to do what's right. Watch it several times and make sure that you spend consistent time training your staff. A term I heard a long time ago from actually interim URSA CEO Brent Darden was stagecoach. And for those of you that know Brent, might have thought it was some country reference as he is from Texas. But what he meant was, as a leader, you are always on stage. So behave like that. Execute these practices. Lead by example. But in addition to being on stage, you're also a coach. So at all times, you're watching your staff and you're coaching them. So again, use this tool, use it several times, but continue to train your staff, coach your staff, and you lead by example and use exactly what you learn from this. And at the end of the day, we talked earlier about the 3 R's of being successful in the fitness industry. That's revenue, that's retention, and that's referrals. And when you use what you've learned to create an incredible experience, you're going to be successful in all three of those areas. But I think what's more important than that is we do work in an incredible industry. And we're in an era where everybody realizes that exercise is medicine. They're starting to understand that gyms are essential. So we have the opportunity to improve people's life, the overall quality of their lives, their health and fitness. And when you improve that, you dramatically improve people's lives as a whole. And I'm not sure that there's anything better than that.